Ladies and gentlemen, welcome here in my music studio here at my clavichord. Today we're going to talk about Mozart, his first sonata, the very first sonata and the very opening of that sonata in the series From Flat to Expressive. Still like that name. So we're going to walk through the first part of it and see what works, what doesn't work, how to get that music to a certain expression, because notes are just notes. You have to always do as an interpreter or as a performer something more than that. I'm going to talk about that, but first you see that the position of my clavichord has changed. If you've seen the previous videos, that's because I'm preparing this room for the Mozart project. That's a project that will be going on for a few years maybe. The first box, 2 boxes probably of 8 or 9 CDs, I'm not sure about that yet. But I repositioned my clavichord, also purchased a beautiful set of microphones, couple of microphones. There are the main couple here for the piano. You don't see that. There's a new couple of microphones there that I could purchase thanks to the support of my Patreons. I also uploaded the behind the scenes of the entire studio and recording chain on Patreon, also for the free section on Patreon. If you just want to be a little closer to the project, that might be something for you. Just sign up to Patreon and you get that behind the scenes for free. So, and I'm recording actually now also this footage with those microphones for the clavichord. They're fantastic. It's unbelievable. The tube. Let's not go into the microphones because I will be talking about microphones instead of Mozart, but I'm testing if I can use these recordings as well for these videos. Still no lighting. The lighting is terrible. I apologize for that. But let's go into the music now. So Mozart's first sonata, he was still very young, 18, 19 years, and he wrote a set of 6 sonatas when he went to Munich to present himself as a musician, hopefully to find a job, which he didn't. 6 sonatas are unbelievable music, but there is something to that music that you need to do, quote unquote. There's just notes. So in this video I'm going to play you the music as I know many of you who take that from the shelf, play and then say like, you know what, and especially this first sonata. There are others too, and we will focus on other sonatas later and other passages. I don't want to go over a long whole sonatas in these videos because I will I prefer to go into detail. So, but if you look at the score, and by the way, I'm not giving the score in overlay. If you're new to this series, just go IMSLP, type in Carl KV 279 and you will find the score. It takes me hours if I would want to do that. So just take a score with you and follow along, I would say. But if you look at the score, it's like a very unusual pattern in the sense that there are like chords, there are 16th notes, there are rests, and it seems to be like in a kind of rhetorical maybe, but also if you see the score, like not so clear path where Mozart is going with the music. And so let me try to bring you some of my, I would say, my vision, my perspective to that, and hopefully inspire you to just add some of these ingredients into your own practice, and you will see that small things often enlighten the music and bring what is our job as a performer, bring those notes that Mozart wrote down on paper so many years ago to an audience, whether that is yourself or it is your friend or partner, or you play for a small gathering, or you play in Carnegie Hall for 2,000 people. It's the same thing for all of us. You need to understand what Mozart saw behind the notes. It's a little bit in contrast to the other series that we have Beyond the Notes, where we talk about the expression, what's the effect, what's the story. This, of course, mixed together. And also, let me check the tempo, because this Mozart project I will be focusing on playing these works in primarily Carl Czerny's tempos, so the metronome marks he gave, but he didn't metronomize everything, at least I don't find that. We have also Moscheles, the other is a contemporary of Czerny, that metronomized quite a lot, and then we have also some Italian metronomarks, student by Hans von Bülow, and I forget the name. Not so many, but I also will pay a little bit honor to his work giving like metronomes for marks for 4 or 5 works, and so I will be using those as well. So for this sonata we have two numbers, quarter note 120, it's a normal C, so common time 4/4 bar structure with 16th notes, nothing too fancy. You have some trills on 16th notes that give us a little bit of a hint that Mozart didn't want to be this music too fast. So quarter note 120 from Czerny. Motions gives a slightly faster tempo, 132, but for the sonatas I'm sticking to Mozart. So 120 is this tempo. So we're hearing the quarter note now. And of course, you know, my tempo research book is about to be finished, by the way, that you have to, that we apply the WBMP, which means we don't say quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, we say quarter note, quarter note, and quarter note, and quarter note. So we have this quarter note. And that creates a tempo that all of you can play, I assume. And if you cannot, don't worry, you will still learn a lot, I think. I hope, at least, as many of you reached out to me to say that you enjoy this series, so I'm happy to continue that. So let's start. Let me first play this piece, or the beginning of this piece, for you in a way that may sound familiar to you when you play it for yourself. And also, in regard to the WBMP, people say it doesn't work, and that's typically the way they demonstrate this music in that tempo, to illustrate that it doesn't work. But that's the tempo. So if you just play the notes, which is not so easy in this case, I will come back to that, then you have something like that. This. Let me play it first how I would play it, or a suggestion how you could play it. Or the difference between the two versions is like day and night. But what I'm doing is not so much, and it's certainly not a secret. You know, when you, or something that is hard to express. Yeah, it's sometimes hard to express, but it's not difficult to do. It's not difficult to point finger to like, here you can do this, there you can do that. I'm not saying it are all tricks, but in a way it are basic things. We've been talking about Bach, where we focused a lot about accentuation. Accentuation is key, especially if you play in whole beat, if you play slower. The faster you play, the less important it is what you do as a performer, because the music, the time span that you have is compressed so much that everything else is compressed as well. So your dynamic attributions as a player, so to say, is compressed as well. So accents become less important. You still have accents, but you have accents like over larger time spans. Harmonic changes, timings, everything gets smaller. So the smaller it is, the less likely you're going to make mistakes. Because when you are playing in slower tempos and you have timings, you have accents, and you do too much, then sometimes the music will break. So it's not so easy to play slower. But the things that I was doing while I demonstrated you my version, so to say, it is the same foundation as the flat performance. The differences are accentuation and timing. And especially in a work like this, where the influence of the CPE Bach style is still very strong, very rhetorical, with questions, with answers, with like a kind of a duo. I have two persons. One person is saying something like, make a statement. New statement. you have to position that in a certain way so that the listener knows that you are going further with something different. And how do you do that? Phrasing, articulation, phrasing, accentuation, and timing. And so let's dive into the first lines here. And again, I will try to do my best to express something what is not supposed to be that hard, but it is hard to really explain what you're doing. What is really hard, the most difficult thing is like how much of it you do, how much timing, how much accentuation, how much articulation, also very important metric, how much of you do that. I can teach you like how to cook a soup, you know, and then I say you have to do some salt and pepper in the soup, and then when you overdo that, your family members are not going to be happy in the evening when they eat that. If you do too little, they will say like, it sounds a little bit, its taste is a little bit flat, so to say. This is the same thing. So the proportions are something that you learn with experience. The elements itself, it brings a lot of peace to your mind and to your musical system. How do you say that in English? When you know that there are certain things that you can work on. So first thing here is timing. For instance, the first 4 notes. That's a kind of statement. By the way, if you play in double tempo, how can you make here something from this first chord, from these first notes that still makes sense you going further? Then you get like a very, maybe easy listening, but like the meaning of the music you detract from that by playing it too fast, especially with these pieces. Might be the reason why Mozart is maybe not taking always, be careful with my words, too seriously what concerns the early works, because you lose a lot of what's in the music with that. But anyways, so you have the first note. How are you going to proceed with that? So you have then. So I cannot just go further like if nothing happens. It's not working, because as a listener, you hear this, and then, yeah, what is it? Should I be listening to the first statement, this one? No, the first statement prepares the next one. So this is just a beginning. You could say that's just an opening. Yeah, but your listeners are there not knowing what you're going to play. It's a little bit the difficulty of classical music, because I see in the program Carl Czerny 279, everybody knows that piece, so everybody knows what to expect. But as a performer, you have to pretend that you don't know. You have to pretend that it's still like you don't know the music. And if you do that, you think differently. Yeah, you know that this is coming. But pretend that your listeners do not know, so they hear that. That's the statement, that's the opening, the curtains open. But Mozart doesn't give a lot of time to proceed to the next thing. People could say like, okay, but this is just like you progress to the next opening is still in the opening space. Yes, that's true, but still there, your task as a performer is to guide the listener to that next point. So a little bit of phrasing, a little bit of timing, if you wish, is really necessary there. And how can we do that? Can we just wait? No, because then the music breaks. So timing means there's a connection between one thing you do and the other thing that you do. In this case, the bottom C and this C. There should be something in between. Articulation, phrasing, timing, it's all related to each other. But how much? There's a salt and pepper thing, but I can give you some tricks or tips, so to say. So the bottom C has a length, it's an 8th note. And at the second part of this quarter note, the C starts. So there is, on paper, not a disconnection between the two notes. The C is followed by the lower C is followed by the higher C just immediately. But as a performer, we can do something about that. We can stretch that quarter note a little bit, especially in the tempos that we are playing. And how much? That's the salt and pepper thing, but I'm going to demonstrate. First, I'm doing nothing. Even though I play some accents, still, as a listener, just listen. Pretend you don't know the piece. You will notice, even if you do not pretend that you do not know the piece, you will notice that when I play the lower C and I continue with the higher C, that you're just following what I'm doing. You're not understanding the music. It's just continuing. And it's not what we should do as performers. We should explain, so to say, what's in the score or behind the score. So what I'm doing is giving a little bit of an accent on the low C. So play it a little bit louder if you wish. But then I will not give it the full eighth note length. I will play it a little bit, not staccato, but a little bit shorter, as if there is a little tail at the end. Yeah, you make the sound go away. It's very detailed, sounds difficult, but just try it. Clavichord is very expressive with this, but you can do that on a harpsichord, you can do it on the piano, on the modern piano, on the digital piano. It's just, you need to listen. What is right for my instrument? And then I just make the note a little shorter, but a little bit, and I stretch the time. I catch up with that. And we humans, we are no metronomes. So when you would play with a metronome, you would see that the metronome is still following the bar. And the time, so the tempo doesn't change, but I give just a little bit, and that's enough to separate this opening statement from the next few 16th notes. Let's just try. First without, and now with. You see? So. Still is going in a, I mean, people that are not agree with the idea of whole beat would say not a fast tempo, but you see that what Mozart wants to say in this one bar, in order to give that in a certain proportional way, or present that in a certain proportional way to our listeners, we have quite a hard job to do. This is one of the most difficult beginnings of Mozart sonatas that I know. I struggled with that a lot. So the secret, so to say, is just in the way you play this bottom C. You play it a little shorter, not too short, because that's like, what's that? So you have to give an ending. And then these lines, these notes, how do you play that? Like this? Or all articulated? Or again, with a certain articulation, where you as a performer decides which notes are more important. So every time you have these kinds of lines going up, that's actually what Mozart writes. Sorry, in fact the piece is like this. All the rest is ornament. See, on clavichord, of course, that's why I love this instrument so much. Listen. So dum, bum, bum. So I play the lower note, and of course this was exaggerated. For those of you who think that you should copy me, no. Yeah, you can do that, but I would say that's a little bit too much pepper in the soup. But focusing on the C. See, and then I can play it like, or I can say like, okay, we have a little bit of hesitation at the beginning, not much. How do you do that? Timing. You just come from the low C. So you could say a little bit of a crescendo. You can do that even on the harpsichord. You don't need to have the actual crescendo to suggest the crescendo. Of course, it helps when you can, but it's not essential. You could say that if you would record that, I'm accelerating a little bit to compensate for that timing at the low C. Listen, this sounds very complex. Just try it. Opening, length of this note, accentuate the first note with articulation. By the way, these trills, for those of you interested in tempo, this is a tempo indicator. So this clearly shows that Mozart didn't have double the tempo in mind, and Czerny didn't either. Czerny was born just in the year of Mozart's death, or just a few years later, and studied with Beethoven. as we all know. So what have we touched upon here? Timing. You can stretch a certain quarter note, even a certain like time span a little bit. You can compensate for that in the following notes. Accentuation, we do that by dynamic accentuation, playing louder, but also an articulation. And that depends on your instrument and also depends on your taste. Again, the clavichord gives everything. It has a flexibility of the strings as everything. It's made for this music. The piano is much harder to do that, and I will also record some Mozart on the Fritz piano forte. It's like a little bit too late as an instrument, but unfortunately I'm not a millionaire that can buy like a lot of pianos. But it's still in the Walter tradition, so it's actually an old-fashioned piano for that time. If you look at the way it's built, so it will sound as it sounds, but it's. But anyways, on the piano you of course lack this, but the possibility that you have here on the piano, and I will also do these kind of exercises on the piano later. So let me first change my glasses to see how many minutes I am rambling here. So 21 minutes. I don't want to make these videos longer than one batch of the camera. So 29 minutes and a little bit. So let's go a little further. Then you have these Alberti basses, and then here it depends just on accents. I can overdo it. Then you really know that the C sharp is like is like an important note, but that's too much. If I do nothing, or a little bit. Second time, third time. Listen here. These things always on the beat. You will hear that in modern performances, hip and mainstream, always before the beat. Of course, with the tempo, it's not possible if you play it much faster to do it on the beat. But if you do it on the beat like it's supposed to do, you have this little vacuum. Mozart is actually, with that, incorporating in the score, like inserting in the score, this little timing. Like the accent comes on the C, but it's difficult if you do it first. Dum, dum. Of course, listen to the clavichord. It really can drag the tone to the next one. And then you have these beautiful, like innocent actually, but it's like, this piece is like just so optimistic at the beginning. So how do we go from this bar to the next one? Just continue, or just give the listener a little bit of time to breathe. See, that's not much. That's just a little bit of time that I leave there, and you have to take that risk. Also, Mozart is actually, in a way, also inserting that in the score, because you're here high. You have to actually go more than one octave down, and you can say like, okay, you practice that. And on the piano, yeah, you can practice that. Clavichord is the same thing. But how do you go from the G here without doing this? Because you need something to go to that E that fast over that large of a distance. And it can only be the key. The key is the only support. But when you do that, you have this accent. We don't want that. So Mozart actually, I think, didn't want that either. So you just wait a little bit. Timing, there you have it again. Also here. Or a little bit more importance here. Tom. Legato. You can do it See, whole beat doesn't work. Yeah, but you need to do something more. So this is important. It's a crescendo, like second time, third, fourth. This is what I want to say. Opera style. Opera was also in Mozart's time. It's not only Chopin. It's not only Beethoven. This is like chom tom chi da ti da ta dum ta ram. Listen to the silence then. There you have your contrast. What's going on? But then we come in like, maybe I'll make it beyond the notes for this piece because this is so beautiful. All these contrasts at that age, like Mozart was like, of course at 19 he was, you could say, a fully accomplished composer. And he developed, of course, into something more even than that. But at the beginning of his career, this is unbelievable. So the contrast now with the second theme is it's like all these nuances. Let me know in the comments if you want to be on the notes of this piece. I'm happy to do that. So and since I have to change glasses since recently, apparently it has to do with age. My eyes are just like changing. Let me know in the comment. For me, it's very hard to tell how you actually watch these videos and what you take from it. And just let me know. We focus now on a few bars, a few passages here. Maybe you want to have like more generic or general, have me not go too much in the depth, so to say, and so stand still with certain passages, but have more covered. I don't know. It's also a little bit who I am. Somebody said in the comments recently, you talk too much. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm born like that. And of course, don't forget, I'm using a language that's not my own. That's always a little bit difficult. But imagine that I would do these videos in Dutch, which I could, by the way, because YouTube opened the automatic dubbing for my channel, but I'm not going to use that. At least I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it works, but that would be terrible with the music and things like that. Let's not do that. So that's all of that. So let me know in the comments. I'm not editing these videos for reasons of time. I explained that in the past. So it's what it is. But I'm more than willing, and I'm looking forward to your reactions as always. And also for next time, I hope to have some lights here, some daylight lamps or lights that my face is a little bit better for YouTube. It's different from the studio, of course. And also let me know in the comments if you like this format, teaching you a little bit, taking you behind the scenes of my practicing, my vision, my whatever. And then every other week we have an excerpt for the podcast. I might come back also with dedicated YouTube videos on tempo reconstruction in the studio. But for now, I'm working on the book very hard. There's a lot going on. If you want to know more about what's all going on, we have updates on Patreon every month. So there might be something for you. Would love to have you all closer to the project because shout out to my patrons. They make a lot possible what otherwise wouldn't be. For instance, me spending hours on writing that book still. So thank you for watching. We see each other very soon again. Bye.